Hands off to hand on, investing across the real estate spectrum.
What it means to be an active real estate investor, right?
Allows on the due diligence process to do much better due diligence.
Minimally viable performance, or just enough not to be fired.
The GP piece for that, or is he part of the LP piece for his equity?
You know, say he's the manager as the operations guy.
Every year, you need to be clear about who you want to be. The other two categories are kind of interesting. The other two categories are things that I'm good at, but I don't like, right? And you still need to find somebody to delegate them. Welcome to the Dental Real Estate Partner Show, the #1 show for dentists, doctors, and entrepreneurs that covers wealth, health, family, freedom in the world. Our wealth strategy session topic today is part 2 of hands off to hand on, investing across the real estate spectrum. We have a great show today, and with me today, as always, is the Sultan of Smart Money, Dr. Reed Faldet. Reed, glad to have you.
Thanks for inviting me back again, John. What do we thought? Professor Cochran in the seat. Are you master's degree Professor Cochran, or you got your PhD? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, no, man, it's real life learning. That's the way to go, right? I don't
PhD
see any
in hard
value.
knocks.
Yeah, I don't see any value in getting an MBA. Okay, Reed, could you summarize briefly part 1 of our topic that we went over in the last show?
Yeah, I definitely can try. We touched on quite a few things, and I don't want to get all fired up again, right, like last time. But so basically, last time we talked about what it means. Really, what we were drilling down on, what does it mean to be an active real estate investor, right? Like by active, we're talking about basically building a business within real estate, whether that's development, whether that's value add real estate like multifamily, buying commercial property. It doesn't matter what it is, but we're really talking about scaling up real estate and building a business around it, and just what that means, the time commitment, the resources involved. So one of the big things we talked about last time, that the main resources involved in any real estate deal are going to be time, capital, and expertise, right? And one of the things we harped on was you got to be honest with yourself and know what you're able to contribute to any given deal if you wish to be more active. Sometimes as busy professionals, we might have capital, right? But we might not have time or expertise. And it's the lack of expertise is not a matter of ability. It's just a matter of, again, time to acquire the skills, the proficiency to secure expertise, right? So what we were talking about a lot of prior in the previous show was being honest with yourself, understanding what you can contribute in real estate in terms of time, capital, or expertise, and knowing where you want to go with it. So maybe in the early stages, you're simply giving capital, right? Providing capital to deals. And then over time, as expertise grows, as you have greater time to commit to actively pursuing real estate, then maybe you'll shift and become more active. And so we kind of talked about, being completely passive, semi-passive, active, to becoming more of like a lead role within real estate.
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the topics we want to touch on today that we didn't really dive into, the last pieces here, would be sweat equity, assigning value to different tasks, right? If you're working with others, you got to kind of value that and find a win-win, synergistic win-win. And then like on a personal level, right? Not trying to get good at something you don't really want to do long-term, right? Kind of aligning your energy there. And so let's start with,
you asked,
yeah.
You talk about sweat equity first?
Yeah, let's start with sweat equity,
Oh.
and then I can dive into some of the others.
You had a question for me that you were going to ask me about property management.
Yeah.
That'll be a good kind of lead into this, because then I can kind of talk about that a little bit.
So as dentists, or entrepreneurs, we know like the number one thing here is operations. You can buy a dental practice that's either doing well or not doing well, but who's operating the sucker, right? That's what really matters. And so some people talk about like, especially on multifamily, buying these apartments and then, maybe adding value with CapEx, making them nicer, all those things. And that's all well and dandy. But who's running the show? And it's the property manager, and they have all these properties, and their incentive is to get as big as they can to while doing a good enough job, right? So they can make as much money as they can.
Mhm.
That's their business model. So what I love that Reed has done is he's partnered with a property manager, and this is great. It brings a deal flow to Reed, right? Because the property manager sees properties, he talks to people that are available. It allows on the due diligence process to do much better due diligence. And then after an
Mhm.
acquisition, it allows somebody who's actually going to implement the plan, working side by side with the construction team, implementing the occupancy plan, right? The retenanting. Okay, our tenants don't pay their rent. Let's retenant with tenants who pay their rent. So like this is a
Mhm.
key person to the team. And I almost let's say 80% of the time, I don't see this team member as I don't see this person as part of the team, right? They're just
Sure.
somebody you hire after. And so I wanted
Mhm.
to, and the typical cost for property management in real estate, those vanilla cost, okay, is typically 6%. 3% of that is towards paying staff. Okay. And the other 3% is like the management company themselves. Sometimes you see it grouped as 6% for management. Sometimes you see it broken up. Sometimes you see it at 2% here, 4% here, but just the most vanilla is 6% with three for each. How do you take that model and bring in a property manager? And property managers usually don't have $1 million to put into your deal. They don't have 200,000 to put in your deal as an investor, right? So you got to come up with some
Mhm.
other way that doesn't involve them ponying them up a bunch of cash, that really aligns them, gets them focused on your project, gets them treating like their project like they own it, as opposed to just
Mhm.
another client who they're still going to do a good job, but maybe not that extra gear that you really want to get those high returns.
And
Okay.
minimally viable, right? Minimally viable performance, or just enough not to be fired, is kind of what a lot of them do. So yes, they don't go over and beyond. So this all kind of ties together. So we talked about the resources of real estate, capital, time, expertise, right? Expertise can be in the acquisition and underwriting side, it can be in the operation side, right? And so a property manager, especially someone who owns a property management company, right, is going to have the expertise to operate the deal. That's what we're talking about, operations. So if I do not have the expertise, I need to go find that person, right? That's the piece of the puzzle I'm missing to plug in. I might have time, I might have capital. I need the boots on the ground operator, their expertise. So you go find that person, right? And I'm lucky enough to find Brett is his name, and his property management company is Ranger Management, and so he's got a team in place that he's been scaling. So uh, Brett, how do we align incentives, right? Well, we don't just hire him as the property manager, right? We bring him in as an equity partner, right? Or maybe you could say he brings me in as an equity partner, depending on his deal, is it our deal, whatever, right? I don't want to misstate how the relationship works. So, but anyway, so essentially he oftentimes finds the deals because he's plugged into that, but also he has such an intimate understanding of operations that he has so much value. He has his own GC, he has his own maintenance team, he has his own on-site property managers, regional managers, right? The business is scaled for him. And so how we align incentives is we give him equity, or he gets equity in the deal. That is his sweat equity, right? He's bringing expertise. He's managing the properties. He's trying to hit pro forma numbers, right? If you bring in a third party property manager that you're only giving 6%, right, of the rent, they aren't as incentivized to hit your pro forma numbers. All they care about is just getting their 6% fee. But Brett is incentivized to hit our pro forma numbers and hit our business plan and exit how we want to exit, whether that's a cash out refinance, whether that's a sale, whatever, because then he gets his piece back, right? And so you just want to keep doing that. Incentives are now all aligned. He brings the expertise and the time as the boots in the ground. I can bring the capital time on the asset management and see high level. And there's other players there too, but that's kind of how we do it. And so if you want to incentivize people to perform, you need to make sure they're tied to performance. So, and that's kind of how we do it.
Does he get more um, equity if he hits certain metrics on the asset management side, on the property management side? Like, is it tied to, like, if your occupancy rate is this, if your, NOI is this? Like, do you guys tie it to specifics, or is it more just broadly? He doesn't get more equity if he performs. It's just if he comes in on the deal, he gets X equity, and then that's supposed to be incentivizing enough that he wants to make sure you can realize that by creating the value and then selling the deal.
Yeah. So it's I think what you said, I don't know if it was the latter or the most recent thing, but basically just straight equity, right,
Right?
for that deal. Right. So
Okay.
that's it. We don't have kind of like a scale like when you hit these, you jump up to here. It's just a flat
Yeah.
equity piece. But obviously that's gonna be worth more the better the deal does. And
Yeah.
he's just like a good guy with good character, right? Like so
Yes.
you want he's already incentivized. He's already gonna do a good job. We don't need to put any more pressure on him than that. So
Okay, so got it. And does he charge you guys a little less on his fees as a property manager now that he's an owner?
you cut out there for a second, Josh.
Oh,
It
does he
looks like your
still
internet
charge
is.
you like the same? Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Mhm.
Does he charge you the same as he charges his other clients? Like, does he charge that project the same fees that he would charge his other clients?
Not always. So sometimes that's also the beauty of it. If there is a business plan where there's a lot of upside on selling or a refinance, like he'll be like, hey, we're gonna be able to cash flow in the beginning. I'm gonna reduce my management fee to keep us in the green, right? And then later on, right, we'll kind of recompensate the property management fee or whatever. He also does a really good job of saying like, hey, like this is going to be a really heavy lift. I think we're going to need more of a full-time on-site property manager at this scale versus, oh, I can just tie my regional person into this, right? So again, he's really trying to control cost, which is really big.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's just,
Yeah.
it's real. It's just like an dental office. It's real. Like sometimes it's gonna take a lot of time, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you can leverage a team member's already in place. Sometimes you gotta hire somebody new. And okay, so that's good. And then typically is that out of is he part of the GP piece
Hmm.
for that, or is he part of the LP piece for his equity?
GP.
GP
Because
piece, got
we
it.
want him, he's a main manager. He's,
Yeah.
you could say he's the manager as the operations guy. So yeah, so kind of going back to sweat equity, right? So if you think of all the components of a deal, and we talk about this in the last show, right? But I'll just keep it really simple and just say, you kind of have your acquisition side. There's a lot of work on the front end of acquiring a property. And so all of the time related to doing that task of acquisition is awarded so much sweat equity because I mean, how many deals fall through, right? And you get no compensation. So
So
that's a big
many.
part of it. Then you have the value add. Well, we'll call it the capital component, right? You got to source all the capital, the lending. We talked about that with development a little bit, but that's a piece, right, of the deal. And then there's the value add component, right, where you're executing on a business plan, carrying that out. And you could kind of couple that with either construction or asset management. Um, and so all of that together, am I missing anything there? That's pretty much kind of the three phases: acquire, um, manage, execute the business plan, put the capital together, and then there's always the disposition side too. But am I missing something there, Josh?
I mean, I don't know how much we want to dive into this. I
We
have
You
on the
listed
DB
every
side, I have about 10, and on the developer side, I have about
you,
$15.
you listed all those in the previous show. So let's not get too deep into the weeds there. But just know there's a lot to do. It's just like a dental office. You could break up all the departments, right? You could say front desk, clinical hygiene, right? Or whatever. And then you could break those down even further. Like this is it's similar, right? The business of
Yeah.
real estate, there's a lot of moving parts. So
You,
yeah.
you got to pay people for the work they do,
Hmm.
and then you got to create incentives to get them to take it to the next gear.
Yep.
That's the simplest way I think about it.
So one of the things that we're gonna kind of bridge into is um one of the things, there's two things, Josh, that I talked to you about that I think would be important is one, the idea of don't get good at something that you don't want to do long term, right? You and I were kind of talking about that a little bit. So for example, right, if I don't want to run a property management company, right? Maybe I don't want to buy 40, 50 single family homes that I'm self-managing, right? That's not something that'll scale because I'm going to eventually be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So it's knowing where and where you want to spend your time, what you want to get good at, because if you want to scale anything, you're going to have to put way more time and energy into that. And if you hate doing it, it's hard to scale it. So understanding kind of what path you want to take, what you are going to be getting good at within real estate, and doubling down on that versus choosing the wrong path and the wrong skill set to acquire just to give up and throw it away because it was something you didn't enjoy doing. So do you have something to share on that, Josh?
Yeah, and this is a whole like 2 hour thing I do, but I'll try to summarize it. Every year, you need to be clear about who you want to be. Okay. I always look at like the 8 parts of my life and I reflect on last year. I usually do this around October, November. I reflect on last year. Yeah, like breaks, Thanksgiving break, I'll take some time, Christmas break, I'll refine it. And I really look at what I did last year and then what do I want to be next year? What are my goals, right? How much vacation do I want to take with my kids and my wife? I track it, like number of days on vacation per year, right? And I evaluate the vacations we took and like, was that fun? Do we like it? And I asked my wife, what do we want to do next year? Here are the ones we did last year, and just get real clear about that, right? How many dates did I go on one-on-one dates with my kids, right? How many one-on-one dates do I want to do a quarter with my children, right? Those are like kids remember that stuff. Like you can do little things that are super impactful, and one-on-one dates with your kids is probably the most impactful thing for them as little humans. They absolutely love it. They do so nice with it. So I have to get really intentional about that. One of the things I do that's related to this is I make a map every year, and it's an axis map. So on one side is passion, and the other axis is proficiency. Okay. So stuff I'm good at, stuff I love doing. And I take a trip time journal. I write down everything I do for like 2 weeks. Okay. Everything. And I kind of categorize it. Is it, HR? Is it accounting? Is it marketing? But I get more specific than that. I probably take it one level deeper on what type of marketing, what type of accounting, and I usually end up with about 40 things that I'm doing. Okay. Within my main two, like what I do. So the main thing I do is like real estate development, and then I do help people invest, like capital raising, help them invest, right? Save money, tax, all that stuff. So there's all sorts of little jobs. I call it jobs, right? So within these two jobs, there's a bunch of like core jobs under those. Let's say 20 each. Okay. I look at all 20 of those jobs and I like, am I good at it? And do I love it? Okay.
Mhm.
And then I make this map. It ends up being a circle, right? And there's the stuff that I love and I'm good at. And I put everything in there and I kind of put stuff that I like more and I'm better at higher up and stuff that I like less and I'm not good at, but still within stuff I love and like, so I can kind of tell what my favorite stuff are. Okay. And then all the stuff that I don't like doing and I'm not good at, I put in this section, right? And those are the things I need to find somebody to take over for me as quick as possible. Okay. Because I don't enjoy it. I'm not good at them. Right? Why am I doing them? The other two categories are kind of interesting. The other two categories are things that I'm good at, but I don't like. right? And you still
Hmm.
need to find somebody to delegate them, but they got to be kind of good because you're good at it, right? And then
Yeah.
there's the stuff I
Yeah.
like and I'm not good at, right? So so I
Those
do
are the
that every,
hardest.
yeah, you have to be
Hardest.
really like clear with yourself, right?
Yeah.
I have a whole thing I built out, a
We might
whole,
have to do just like an episode on this because it's dense and it'll help people if
we
they just
will,
trying to with intentionality on that.
we will do it. Just trying to give you the words that I use. I just hadn't thought about it. I always forget what verbiage I use.
I think that the key, and I think my wife and I talk about this all the time, is just being very intentional, right? You're intentional with your time because that's all you have in life, right? We all have the same amount of time. So getting the most out of life requires you being intentional with every task that you do. So you either are productive with it or you get enjoyment from it. And if you can do both, I mean that's the perfect intersection.
Yeah. And so I use different words on this, but I want to give people an idea. So your desire zone, things that you're passionate and proficient at. Okay. Things that your drudgery zone, things you don't like, you're not good at.
Mhm.
Okay. The disinterest zone, things that I'm good at, but I just don't really care. Okay. Disinterest zone. And then the distraction zone. Those are things that I like and I'm terrible at, right? Or just
Yeah.
complete waste of time, right? That you can identify when you track your time journal, like, wow, I'm wasting a lot of time looking at Zillow or
Mhm.
designing websites. Well, there's other people who can do that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and drudgery for me is like HR, government compliance, legal, email, operations. I can't stand operations. Implementing systems make me want to throw up, right? Things that I'm good at that I just are not super interested in is like tax and accounting. I mean, accounting. I like tax, but not so much accounting. Building systems. I'm okay at building them, but yeah, I just don't like running them. So you just kind of like do this. And then it becomes clear to you who you really are, right? You're being honest with yourself, who you really are. And then it's so easy to
Mhm.
say no. You're like, that's in my drudgery zone. No. That's in my
Mhm.
distraction zone. No. That's in my disinterest zone. No. It's so easy to become no and not waste time. But the
Yeah.
piece here that I think I want to touch on is there's one more category. That's called the development zone. Okay. This is where you identify the things that you're really interested in, you're really passionate in, that you'd like to learn more about that year and develop a proficiency in.
Mhm.
Okay. So when you're looking at real estate or these other businesses, I mean, realistically, you can do two things in my brain. Okay. Reed, you can be good at like real estate and you can be good at running a dental office, being a dentist. Okay. Two things. Okay.
Mhm.
If you told me that you were getting seriously into um, running tanning salons, I, I would question, or Subways, that's even better. 'Cause you can always buy a Subway franchise. I
I was
would
gonna,
be,
I was like, why
yeah.
did you look at me at the tanning salon? I don't,
Oh
why did
no,
that come to mind first?
because I'm so pale. Maybe subconsciously I just reflected. Yeah, like a Subway is a good one, right? Because like people are, oh, I'm going to buy a Papa Murphy's
Yeah.
or a Subway. It's like you don't know anything about that. It's super competitive, right? I have concerns about that. If you told me that, right? So when you're thinking about, hey, I'm a dentist, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, or hey, I'm a doctor, like this is what I'm good at, this is where I'm focused, right? You can only pick one other area that you want to get good at
Mhm.
most. Often people can't even do two, right? At most. So really identify your development zone each year and say yes to what you want to say yes to, and say
Mhm.
no to these other things so you can actually execute on your vision there. So
Yeah, no, well said. And I think I'll just because I know we have to get off this because we both have a couple other things after this. But what I wanted to touch on this point because what you said is kind of ties to this is within real estate. I was talking about this idea of like the launch off, right? Of one of the things you can do if you want to, or you think you want to eventually develop the skill of real estate, like your development zone, right? Where you think, I eventually want to do all the real estate myself. I want to lead a team. I want to build a development project. I want to build a property management company and whatever it is, whatever you decide in your vision that you want for within real estate, you don't have to do that day one, but you put that in your mind as like, hey, that's my target, what I want to get to. And so what I talk about is this launch off point within real estate. If you need capital, time, and expertise, how can you build towards that launch off point where you can go do that thing yourself? And sometimes it's just a matter of investing in other people's deals, partnering with other people so that you can grow some equity, right? So you can get a good return in real estate, also grow some expertise along the way, right? And eventually get to a point where you have the time to do that launch off. Now you have some expertise. Now you have some additional equity growth that now you can go do some of your own deals, right? And you'll feel like it's a little bit of a safer approach than just diving into your first development project.
You cannot scale yourself effectively. You just can't. You only have so much time in the day, right? And if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, your family, your health, something like that. There's a great book out there, Dan Sullivan, Who Not How, right? That covers this concept. Also, if you ever listen to Tony Robbins, right? He grew his wealth to whatever, 100 million, 200 million. He didn't start growing his wealth into the billions until he figured out who, not how. This is a
Mhm.
person who understands this area. I'm going to partner with them in this area. All right. And I do the same thing. And sometimes, we talked about banks being super helpful with the underwriting. HUD, okay, HUD is like the government lender, right? To get a HUD loan, they typically want you to partner with another HUD developer, like a developer yourself who's done HUD at least twice. Okay.
Mm.
So the bank is forcing this habit. They're saying, HUD is saying, do partner twice with other HUD people, right? And then maybe we'll do a HUD loan with just you. So
Yep.
yeah, like work with others, get better, gather those skills. And you'll be able to scale your growth and your freedom. So good.
I think that was good for part two.
Great content today. Thank you, Reed. That's a wrap.